Kia ora tātou, nei rā te mihi kia koutou e tēnei wā, ka hara mai nei ki tō tātou hui, o te Regional Transport Committee, i tēnei wā. Tuatahi, ka mihi ki ngā atua ka harawa, ho mai o kaha, ho mai o aroha ki a mātou i tēnei wā, i ngā Whakatau hoki, tēnā koutou, ka huri au taki whakaro, ki ngā tini aitua, ku weha ki te pō e ngā mate, o ia marae, o ia takiwā, o ia motu, haere atura. Apati hono tātou hono rātou ki a rātou, apati hono tātou ki a tātou, tēnā koutou, e ngā koro matua, e ngā memo o tēnei komiti, nau mai hara mai, ki tēnei whare, ki te rohi nei o Ngāti Kuri, tēnā koe Craig, mō tō karanga ki a mātou, ka hara mai nei, ki kai kaura, tēnā koe, it's great to be here. So just adding to open our meeting, acknowledge Craig for having us, and of course the in the rohi of Ngāti Kuri, so it's great to be here in kai kaura, so thank you, Craig. Declare our meeting open, and we've got a quorum just, which is good. And thanks to those online, great to see you there, Murray. And who else have we got? Yeah, Ian, great to see you there. And who's the other MB? Oh, Megan. Kia ora. Yeah, and Oliver's in 2 places. That's really good. And nice to see you here still, John, as well. Great to have you here, and all of our staff in the room. So thank you. And I know that people have travelled from afar. So Karen, you'll be from the further south. So great to have you here as well, and your team. So let's get into it. We've got yeah, they can come up to the table. Yeah. I'm happy. We're in Kaikoura.
Yeah, relax.
So yeah, if you just want to come to the table, feel free. And yeah, we've just got a slightly different setup because we're here in a different room. So we've got these. This is a speaker here, which sort of trying to capture the people up the front. And there's a. Oh, you've probably been through this already because you've already had a meeting today. Did it work all right?
Yeah.
Did you? Oh, okay, good.
Nobody complained.
Nobody complained. Okay, cool. So Ian, I'm assuming you can hear us. Yeah, cool. These thumbs up. Cool. So we've got apologies from Mayor Bowen, Mayor Major, and Mayor Rowley. Was there any others? And Munro. Great. Any others that we need to note? No, all good. Any conflicts of interest with anything on the agenda today? No, that's good. We don't have any public forums or anything like that. There's no extraordinary urgent business that I've had. There's none? No, good. And no notices of motion. Let's go to our minutes, and that's on page 11 of our agenda, and that's our last minutes of the 13th of February. So if we go to that, has anyone got any comments they want to make about the minutes, or should we just put the resolution up? There it is. Oliver's very efficient. If I got a mover for those minutes, Mayor Broughton and Mayor Mackle, cool. Any comments, discussion? No. All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? That's carried. Let's go to our next, which is our first report. It's 8.1, and this is our Regional Public Transport Plan Hearing Panel Report. And of course, the big chunky part of the agenda there with the updated Regional Public Transport Plan. Len, online. Yeah. Yeah, true. So Len's going to take us away with this at the start, and he's going to come out of the speaker over there, and it might just be quiet, so we just might have to listen pretty hard.
Leave it for Sonia, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Okay, true. Over to Sonia. Cool.
Yeah. So through you, Mr. Chair, kia ora. I'll take the paper and attachment as read. So essentially the purpose of this report is following the consultation, hearings and deliberations by the 2 panels. So the purpose of the report, is to seek the Canterbury Regional Transport Committee's endorsement of the amended draft Canterbury Regional Public Transport Plan 2025-35, and for the committee to recommend to the Canterbury Regional Council that the draft plan be approved and adopted when considered at the July Council meeting. So you'll see page 18 of your agenda contains the 4 recommendations, which we'll come back to shortly. Just a quick overview of the process. So staff working across all partner agencies developed the draft Canterbury Regional Public Transport Plan. This was a refresh of the existing plan to incorporate legislative, strategic and policy changes that we've seen since 2018. The draft plan consultation was held between the 25th of September and 24th of October 2024, and almost 800 individual and groups provided feedback on the draft annual plan. So that was really excellent to see. Hearings were held between the 18th and 25th of November last year at Environment Canterbury, with a total of 65 submitters scheduled to be heard. The draft plan has been updated with proposed changes following the consultation, and these were endorsed by the GCP and the RTC hearings panels with some other proposed amendments. So you've got 3 attachments there in your agenda, which makes it quite a meaty agenda. The first is the unconfirmed minutes of the hearings panel. The second is a marked up version of the draft regional public transport plan. So that has red text, which shows you where some inaccuracies, typos and design layouts changes. The green text is the recommended changes from the officers' report, which was endorsed by the hearings panel. And the blue text is additional changes recommended by the hearings panel. So the third attachment you have is the final draft of the RPTP 2535, which, if approved, is the one that will be submitted to the Canterbury Regional Council for approval. The Greater Christchurch Partnership Committee have also been through the same process concurrently. So they approved the draft plan and the recommendations last Friday, so Friday the 23rd of May. And so, yes, so I think happy to take any more questions or any feedback or clarification. Thank you.
Sonia, thank you. Any questions from members? What we've got in front of us. So we've got, as Sonia said, we've got the minutes from our deliberations panel meeting, and then we've got the amended plan in there, and to recommend that to the council to adopt, and just note that the panel will be discharged after that, so that's good. I just wanted to note a few things. So during our annual plan submissions that we had quite a lot of submissions, especially from the Selwyn community, parts of the Selwyn community. Obviously, in our annual plan at the Regional Council, we went out with a couple of options for Selwyn public transport initiatives. And one of the things we heard was really that we've got, at one end of the spectrum, we've got our community vehicle trusts, which service some of those smaller towns. I know that that's across the region. We have them across the region. And then we've got our scheduled services, obviously coming out of Christchurch and spreading out there. And we also heard from Ashburton, of course, about the desire for different services. And so I was really conscious as I was reading through this regional public transport plan that we had policies in there that could try and fill that void. And I'm happy to say that I think there is. So policies 1.3, which is about on-demand services, 1.4 special services, and 1.5 about the community vehicle trusts. There's a lot of policies in there that I think give us a hook to build on that work, because what we heard from the community is that those two ends of the spectrum, maybe there's something that needs to be developed in the middle. And we had quite a big discussion in our deliberations just on Tuesday about how we fill that void. And so we did actually put some money forward. We agreed to put some money forward to keep investigating what could be done between those two ends of the spectrum. So I'm happy to report that. So that's just something I really wanted to note. The other one was, you would have heard the rail discussion come up during the deliberations the other day too. We had a big lengthy discussion on that too from one of our councillors putting that idea forward. And I think I had to let it go in terms of the meeting. It had to be put. We had a good debate on it, good discussion on it. And in the end, we sort of agreed that, there's nothing wrong with having a conversation about it. And that's what we agreed to in the end, rather than bring money forward or anything to do anything more dramatic. And the key thing, I think, from my perspective, and other councillors may share this, but was that it's not I didn't see it as competition with MRT, because that's really important that we keep PT Futures and MRT in terms of those building blocks, but that it should be seen as being complementary potentially to that. And that's what the discussion we can have, especially in those outer areas of the MRT route. So I just wanted to put that out there. That's my perspective of it. I don't know where all the rest of my councillors sit on that issue. But of course, we did agree to have that conversation with Kiwi Rail. And I know that you've had some media inquiries, Dan and Sam in particular. So just wanted to bring that up, and happy for others to discuss that. the third one I'd bring up is we have had a bit of feedback from some of our councillors around the table about the pets on buses stuff. People are pretty supportive of it, the policies that are in the plan, but the code of conduct part of it, people are interested to see how that pans out over time in terms of the restrictions and conditions. So there might be some more discussion on that in time. So I just wanted to raise that with you, just from what Environment Canterbury's been going through. So, but happy to have discussion on those points. All good? Yeah, Sam.
I guess firstly, thank you for the work that the regional council does around public transport, and thinking to the future. I guess not everything can be done right now, but there is demand now as well, and so part of the regional conversation needs to be, if we've got the levers, how do we enable them to be activated? Not just, it's good to have them, but we also need to be able to fund them and make them move. So yeah, thanks for the acknowledgement on that, Craig. The Boston to Rangiora Rail conversation, I feel like, is one of these things that sounds like a great idea and is often brought up, or seems like every 6 months continues to be brought up, and through the MRT business case was part of the conversation and wasn't the preferred outcome or priority of work. So yeah, if we can make it happen, it's a good thing. But it does sound to me like it's a bit of a distraction from the more important thing, which is MRT. And MRT will be city shaping for Greater Christchurch, and we need that to happen. So it's no surprise that this has come up in the media, are interested, and there'll be people in our communities that want to see it happen. And I'd love to see it happen as well, but that's after we get MRT and PT Futures sorted, funded, landed, and then we can look at what else needs to go around it. Would be my view.
Thanks, Sam. Yeah.
I endorse those remarks, and it's just a shame that we're having this conversation through the media as opposed to partners having. So I just say that, and that's basically the positions that I wasn't with. Media queries. It is what it is. I don't mind that we're having a long time a fan of rail and transport processes. Is what it is. I just appreciate, I guess, there are to be discussions. In my community raised periodically, and we've looked at that in the past. But if we are keen to visit and numbers there, and there's let's see it. Lots of other things that we also like to see. Visualising our existing rate bus. It's not as utilized as it could be, and that would be a really good initiative to topic of personal training, but that it's being discussed. So yeah, it's not unhelpful that I've got a query that I'll have to consider carefully over the next couple of days how I respond to you. No doubt probably we might have a chat with you over dinner.
Yeah, for sure.
Together,
and
playing it all out through them.
Yeah, and happy to do that together.
Thanks for letting us know how that transpires.
And as you'll be aware, if there's a mover and a seconder from the floor in a council meeting, there's not much I can do about it. I have to let it be put. And of course, we had a few out of the blue ones on Tuesday that came through from councillors, and that's their prerogative to do that. And I think we landed at a good place because obviously Jess had a big job there answering questions because people weren't sure about it. About where we were landing, but I think the thing is there was money in year 2 of the our long-term plan, which would have been this financial year coming. We moved that before Christmas, before we put the draft consultation out on our annual plan, and the idea was to move that back. That council wanted that money moved back, so there was money in there for the rail studies. He had a slightly different idea about how that money should be spent, and that's what caused, I think, a bit of concern from other councillors in the room, and that's why we ended up with, okay, well, let's have a conversation. versus bringing some money forward and spending it in this in the next financial year. So I think we got to a better place than where it might have got, but do acknowledge the difficulty that it may have caused. And of course, I can see how people see that butting up against MRT. But if we can look at opportunities, how they may be complementary, and like people have said, that's a good thing. So let's explore that. And Kiwi Rail might be a quick conversation, might be a long one. We'll see. And for sure, let's work together over the next few days, if you want, to think about the media, because I haven't even got a position on it at the moment, other than what I've said today. So thank you. Any other comments on the regional public transport?
Yeah, just this is a failed thing. It's very clear in the spatial plan. MRT, Belfast is the terminal point. We hadn't actually agreed on anything for those other extension loops and how that was going to happen. So that's the way that it was spatial plan. So I think, yeah, the conversation with Kiwi Rail knows where that's going to go. A parallel thing. Here, the priority is the MRT PT program. That's all important to be shown. And if there are opportunities to link.
Great. So we bring the resolutions up? We can. Cool. So here's the resolutions. Oliver will bring them up on the screen. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Happy to take them together. Is there a mover for the resolutions? Sam, cool. And Neil, happy to second it. Thank you. Any discussion? More discussion required? Doesn't look like it. All those in favour?
Just to thank the hearings panel for the work.
Sure. Thank you.
Well done.
Of course, and all the work in the background of the staff to bring the different versions so we can understand how it's changing. Right? Yeah, for sure.
Just quickly on the GCP hearings panel, those items, 5 amendments made, they were paid 19 and marked in blue, marked up.
And that's good because Grant's been our link on both of those sort of committees, so that's good. So we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Any against? That's carried. Thank you.
Craig, could I just make one comment?
Yep.
It's just around the process. We had the hearings on the 26th of November and we didn't have the deliberations until the 20th of March.
Yep.
It's just too far apart for the panel to remember what went on back then. So it is what it is, but for future when it's redone, perhaps shrink them, get them together.
Get them together. I agree.
Just a comment.
Good idea.
Just on that comment, we are going to do a lessons learned process as well, so definitely have that feedback on board.
Thank you.
I thought you were going to say it's because he's old.
Jess couldn't say that, but you can say that, Craig. But so let's go to 8.2, and that's on page 254. So racing through it now. Page 254 of our agenda, and this is the Regional Transport Committee report, and we've got Claire. Over to you. And you grab the speaker. Yeah.
Get my lecture. So, Kotahi, it's really nice to be presenting in Kaikoura. I have family who live in that area. So this piece of work is came out of the last RLTP, where we tried to get an analysis of what might be an affordable, feasible RLTP for Canterbury, and we used population as an indicator in the GPS activity ranges, and that kind of showed that there was a theoretically affordable $10 billion RLTP, and then the funding decision came in and there was that $4 billion funding over 10 years in Canterbury. And so we had a look, this piece of work then was like, well, how do we reduce that risk for 2027? And what could be done so that in 2027 we're not in the same position where councils are getting less money than what's needed to address issues, including NZTA, because this is also an issue for state highway maintenance and state highway improvement as well. So it's across the board as an issue. So what I did was took the levers that were mentioned in the GTS in terms of tolls, road pricing, road user charges, and analysed those against the using the 2024 RLTP and the on the horizon signal as a bit of a proxy. What might be a 2027, the types of projects that might be developed for 2027 RLTP, and then looked at a whole range of international policy documents from like World Bank, the UK Treasury, and the American Public Transport Association. I kind of looked at how these levers are used and how much revenue comes in from them. So they if you put an urban bridge versus a rural bridge and you put a toll on it, you might get a range of revenue. Why? So I think worked out broadly over a 10-year period how these levers might work for Canterbury, and assuming best case decisions in terms of a policy, government policy settings that work for Canterbury. They mainly, the new levers would mainly support like quite large infrastructure projects. And so you might get best case scenario if everything works well, it might be a 10% from these different levers. But since that analysis was done, there have been decisions made by Cabinet, some of which have gone into legislation, like the time of best charging, or not, well, there's bill, that's what I prefer that yet. And then the tolling has gone from Cabinet. So those decisions weren't necessarily the best settings for Canterbury. So the amount that's likely to come into Canterbury from the use of those levers is a smaller proportion. But the big one is the road user charges and the road user charge transition. So I looked at that in terms of how much might be generated from Canterbury from a transition to road user charging over time. And I used vehicle kilometres travelled as the proxy for road use. And so that kind of came out at around 4.8 billion over 10 years. So the last RLTP, we had about 3 billion from local councils combined, and there would have been about 4.8 billion from road user charges, kind of looking at a 7-8 billion RLTP. But then would that realistically be in place by 2027 for the 2027 RLTP? And no, this is like, it would be a long-term shift towards road user charges as the fleet transition. And also NZTA having those commitments into other regions. So it's not likely to organically, just magically create more money for Canterbury. So what I'm recommending is to advocate for regional funding allocation of the road user charges. And that would give you greater certainty and also hopefully flexibility and support for local decision making over the distribution of those road user charges in the region. So there's a table, the appendix on page 206 of your agenda. So this table sort of shows population, GDP and BKT with the proportion of estimate from the NLTP, and you can see for Canterbury the proportion that comes in is significantly lower compared with the population, the GDP and the BKT. If BKT was a proxy for road use, the generation of the revenue. So there are operational issues for NZTA. Whenever people say, can you try and make road user charges go back to where they're collected from, there's operational issues with that. So what I'm proposing is, or recommending, is advocating for a policy position for the funding allocation service, for the funding allocation to consider vehicle kilometres travelled as a way that they make a regional funding allocation, and that potentially being provided earlier in the piece to support the collective planning process and the prioritisation of projects. So you get a more feasible and affordable RLTP. So at the moment, nationwide, when people are planning their RLTP, they don't have a signal from NZTA. They've got the GPS, but there isn't an investment signal from NZTA. So having regional funding allocations would support better implementation in TMA and being able to provide you guys with an RLTP. Another piece why I think this could work really well is there was an evaluation in the UK around delegated decision making on transport funding and giving like a bulk amount of funding down to the council level. And what that showed is that it actually increased transport planning capacity and capability over time. So it's like a double whammy that you actually, without having to invest in improving your capacity and capability in your staff, just the fact of it being delegated down leads to that improved capacity and capability over time. What we also did, so I did the looking at what were the big things that could shift, also looking at what we could do as organisations and was there anything in this space to look at. And so we got Ernst & Young in to have a conversation with everybody and have some anonymous conversations about what's well and what's not. And we didn't find anything significant that would require, oh yes, we need to do a major restructure or something, so which is good. But we did find some opportunities, which we've been handed that over to the appropriate managers that they can follow up on and look at some improvements. But I can't say, actually, here's something that, and to create collective impact, you could collaboratively do that would really drive significant investment into really, unfortunately. So, and those are opportunities for improvement that we were talking to the managers. But I think the steering group wants to table stuff off. Yeah. That will take a long time to get in and see improve. But the two things that I found through this group, they all take a really long time before you would actually see financial benefit from them. Nothing that would significantly reduce the risk for a massive change in government. Any questions?
Kia ora, Claire. Any questions for Claire? I know that we had a conversation about this one of our previous meetings, and the table that is on 264 was very enlightening for everybody. I know that, and it still is. And so it's really great work that you've brought that together. And I think I've heard it again today, how you explained it, that it's a good way of helping us plan within a realistic envelope if the government would accept that as a way to look at allocations over time. But I think it is a good way to have, if we did get that, that's what we could have in our budgets to plan for. So I think it's a really useful tool, and I can see the resolutions there to try to get us to advocate that to government and see if they'll listen, but with the good evidence that you brought to us here, Claire. So thank you. Any other questions or comments, councillors? Mayors? Yep, there you go.
Thanks, Claire. It's pretty good that you've got some evidence there and some answers of what's going on. I'm kind of looking on page 258, item 20, where you've got the comment that this means that 2027 RLTP may need to start excluding activities. LTP. Find that reasonable. Suggesting that you keep 20%. Yes. And if the stuff we had on the horizon, just allowance stuff, that's what
It would depend on what's proposed by the approval applications for the RLTP. So what we do for the RLTP is we will create this strategic framework and prioritise projects. So we will need to draw an affordability line. And I just realised that half of that not mine, so I won't drink out of it. So we're doing like a co-design process with staff from the councils around the region as to how that prioritisation will work. So we'll be starting that work at the start of next year. So we're doing the strategic planning part is this year before December. And we'll be discussing how do we create an affordable, feasible plan. So that I can actually table that. As an advisor, I feel like the rationale of going, well, central government could fund it if they want to, doesn't really, I wouldn't feel comfortable saying, and therefore it's affordable and feasible. I kind of feel like we should do a bit more work as staff to come up with an affordable, feasible plan, because that's the wording in the LTMA. And so I thought it was worth signalling to you guys that there is that risk that we may have to. We haven't drawn a line in the sand in Canterbury before. Other RTCs have, and they will use their authority to do that. The biggest example I know of was, I think, Taranaki RTC didn't include the entire state highway improvements project in 2021 because they didn't feel it aligned with their strategic direction. So there are levers that can be pulled that are pretty strong, which we've never pulled in Canterbury. We're pretty collaborative, all in together. But I think it is that tension now around what's affordable, and that being the driver behind perhaps needing to draw a line.
Thanks, Claire. Neil?
Yeah, I think what I'm going to say now fits in here. This RLTP feeds into the NLTP, which is the overarching document. We have our LTPs, and they're around the wrong way. And we've talked about this for years and years, never seem to get them aligned. Is that piece of work to align somewhere in this, in our RLTP development? Otherwise, we're going to end up with exactly the same what we had last time. And that is our LTPs were done. And then the NLTP came out. It's way different what we had. And we've got, then we have PAs have a problem, which we can't address for another year until we do an annual plan, which is different to our long-term plan.
I agree.
They're just not aligned.
I think, Claire can answer it,
I guess there is work underway. So the last GPS signal is a better alignment between GPS and LTP, RLTP and LTP. So MOT staff, NZS staff, and regional RLTP staff have been working together on what that might look like. And so in the NLTP, they have been looking at the timelines for NLTP development, going through and checking that in the GPS lead and the RLTP lead. And I think there is an improved approach coming, and that will come out in the next NLTP bulletin. Those new timelines and approaches will be indicated. So I've seen the draft and staff are working on it, but I don't know what's public about that yet. Sorry, but I just want to give you that assurance.
Okay,
And the feedback from that I've provided to that space was that the LTPs aren't shiftable, and so transport needs to shift around LTPs rather than transport. So that's been our baseline to try. But in the context of there hasn't been any update to the legislation, so it's about improving implementation of the legislation and that wants to.
Thank you for that.
The other thing I do note is that, part of the resolutions is to write to the minister. I mean, we could add that in as another point. We don't have to maybe put it in the resolution, but we could note it, that we just note again the alignment issue around RLTPs, LTPs, and NLTPs would be really good. Yeah, so I think that's something we can mention, because I think we all agree that that's not helpful. But I think in terms of what Claire suggested too, around if you get a signal that VKT was going to be used as some sort of proxy, that could provide some comfort, because you'd feel like you knew what the envelope was that you could plan for. So I think that's another good point that we're going to write about, and that can be expanded on in the letter, I'm sure. So if people are happy, we could note that we'll add that to the letter about the alignment of those planning and funding documents. Halfway. Ian, got a question? Comment?
Look, I've probably got a couple of comments and then a query as well. So I think I would just reiterate why I said last time that I'm not aware of any appetite in central government for a proportional funding model or changing the model such as this, because it would take away from them their ability to invest in areas of the greatest need. So I just note that to the committee. On page 256, you've got a table in front of you which talks about the NLTP and the percentage of NLTP share. And I'll just remind the committee that the NLTP is comprised of two things. It's the NLTF, which comes from the hypothecated fund, and the Crown funding on top of that. And so I suppose there is that subtle difference as to what's currently funded through road user charges and driver licensing and fuel excise duty as the hypothecated fund. If you're looking at proportionality, the Crown money is something that's a bit different, because it's specifically targeted to specific projects and is not part of the hypothecated fund. So I just wonder whether that NLTP share percentage is just a bit misleading. And then the last thing I would just say again is that I think the greatest opportunity is to make sure that, which is what you're talking about really with your RLTPs and your LTPs, is that collectively we submit a high quality programme with good evidence and take the opportunity to influence the GPS and things like the IPM en route to having an NLTP. I think having a good programme with good data is the best way of hopefully securing the right amount of funding for Canterbury. That's all I've got to say, really.
Thanks, Ian, and acknowledge those points. And yeah, we understand. I think the government's maybe got different priorities at the moment, but it doesn't stop us from trying to convince them that there may be a better way forward, particularly for Canterbury. And I mean, I note that the table on page 264, VKT and those other metrics seem to work pretty well for nearly everyone else except for us. So I take the point that there may be different sources of the funding that make up the NLTP. But yeah, it's still quite an outlier in terms of Canterbury and the numbers we're getting. And I also acknowledge that it's not just been this government, it also happened in the previous NLTP as well. So it's just something we have to work on. And I'm also conscious that we also have to be putting the projects forward, which I think we do in Canterbury. I think we've put a pretty good case forward for a lot of projects. But that's our other challenge, is how do we keep selling those things that are fundable and attractive to government at the time. So that's the other flip side of this, that sort of strategic part going forward as well. And I remember we've had a previous discussion about that, and I think that's the bit we want to work on as well. So looking forward to that.
You mentioned the hypothecated funding, which is really a valuable thing that New Zealand has that some other countries don't have, which you can then use to make more of a case for assurance around being able to delegate down the funding, because it's been in place for such a really long time. And so with the VKT, I don't want to do the government policy advisor's job for them of digging into how it might work practically. I've just identified the area that's an issue we're recommending that you can advocate for, and then the government advisors and strategy advisors work out the detail. But potentially, even so the minister's been talking about the advice from the Infrastructure Commission around 60 cents on the dollar going towards baseline funding. So even if you could get 60 cents on the dollar based on VKT for baseline funding towards maintenance, operations, renewals, existing PT services, that would give that same certainty, flexibility, support for local decision making. But I don't want to do the government's policy advisor job and spend my time and money doing that. So I haven't delved into how you might practically make it work, but I do think this would solve that issue for Canterbury. Yeah, I just want to add that. And you know, the government, the minister's open to change. He's talking change. The government's making change to how infrastructure is planned, selected, funded, and so in that environment of change, advocating for change. You know, the door's open for those recommendations. And it's a government that understands user pay as well, which is really useful because transport is a user pay system. With the freight movements, 80% of the freight movement in Canterbury is within Canterbury. They're not going out of Canterbury. So that road user charge is the users of the roads in Canterbury staying in Canterbury. So it adds to that case of the road user charges and having that BKT cross become that. And I don't know the percentage of passenger travel. And I mean, even one of the possibilities might be saying, well, here's a maximum amount, and it goes into Canterbury, and then if there's road user charges left over from Canterbury road users, that could tip into Otago, West Coast, Picton, even connections to the North Island that benefit the South Islanders. And I don't know. That would be for the government to figure out how to make it.
Thanks, Claire.
Just quickly on the flip side of that, I think Frontier are a big user of our roads in Canterbury. And I'm not 100% certain, but I heard the road users are bought in Hamilton, but driven on Canterbury.
True.
Yes, so that's why operationally you can't actually tie specifically the road use money through to the funding allocation. So a policy for the funding allocation service corrects that is my recommendation.
That's a good point. That sort of reinforces the point I think Claire's making is that road use charges could be bought with the head offices, right?
Yeah, that's right.
But then they're used in different regions and districts. So, but that's why VKT could be more useful as a proxy. So, thank you, Claire. Any other questions, members? No. Well, let's put our recommendations up. And thanks again for the great advice and information, Claire, and good answers. So we've got a series of resolutions here, 1, 2, 3, with a few subparts to it. And of course, the first bit's about agreeing to that joint advocacy approach. And then the second is about writing a letter with that approach in it. And thirdly, just another sort of wrap-up noting recommendation there. Have we got any movers for the resolution? Thanks, Mayor Mackle, and seconded by Mayor Brown. Thank you. Any discussion required? No, thank you. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Any? Oh, Ian, you got your hand up again, or?
Just given the topic in this, can we just note that the NZT abstains from having a view on it?
Sorry, I didn't pick that up. What was that?
Just given the topic, could you just note that the NZT abstains from having a view on this recommendation?
Yeah, for sure. All good. We'll note that. So all those in favour, please say aye. Any against? And abstention from Ian. Thank you, Ian. All good. Yeah, all good. No worries. Thank you. Let's move on to 8.3. And again, just thanks for all the work that's going on behind the scenes there. It's great. So we're going to move to 9.1. And this is our resolution status report. Jess, I think we're over to you for this.
Thank you, Chair. So on the paper is read. The first resolution tracker agenda item there is green, and the second one we have some actions in progress. We'll be bringing back to you a wrap up of the public transport improvements in Greater Christchurch. It was an action out of the deliberations on the RLTP. So we'll be bringing that back at the next meeting in August. That was when that was scheduled, and work is ongoing with Karakia and others as well around their aspirations in the transport space. So happy to take any questions, quite straightforward paper.
Thank you, Jeff. Any questions? No. Let's put our resolution up. And that's just a note of the status of the resolution report. Any movers for this? Thanks, Mayor Broughton. Any seconder? Thanks, Mayor Gordon. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Any against? That's carried. Thank you. Let's go to 9.2. And this is our regional road safety direction. And Erica, over to you. Well done. Get up there. Thank you.
Regional focus area. Regional focus. What's the example? Regional focus. Purpose of the underline. I'll take the report and actually as read. Purpose. Regional road safety working group. Apart from each of the those and Kotahi, please. A collective view of road safety by the series was identified. Which is and action across the region by guidance for local road safety action. And this project was I'd like to highlight the 4 regional purposes at intersection, speed, alcohol, users such as informed by the data provided by EZTA and the case agreed upon by a working group and the master. Given the relationship between and including this of the same system as input was also
Sure, Erica. And just to acknowledge Murray, I know you chair the committee on this. I just want to acknowledge you. I know you might not be able to speak at the moment, but if you did want to, please jump in and let us know. But just Waka, yep.
Yeah, look, thank you. Look, I wasn't able quite to hear what Erica was explaining, but I think the report has been well articulated in the narrative and well guided by Tiara through that process as well. So I'd like to thank Tiara and Erica for their input, and I'm supportive of the recommendation as it's written. But thank you. Thanks for the opportunity, Craig.
Oh, good. And you happy to move the resolution, Murray?
100%.
Okay, great. That's great. Do we have any other questions before we do that? Yeah, Karen?
I just noticed online one of your topics was alcohol. There's been quite a bit of attention in the media as well as about drivers under the influence. And I wondered if that those 2 items should be perhaps linked together.
So in the data provided by they have the group alcohol and drugs together crash contributing factor. Although as part of that, the alcohol can rise 10 times. That's what it is. Alcohol is a region, age, local, used data.
I just think that there's been various levels in the regions where increase the breath and downward region. And if there's going to be an increase intensity use, how that would go through.
I guess these are not
I think that's a good idea to note that, we should keep looking at the data, like you said, because it might be that the drug numbers do come up. Especially, I suppose, in the past, the detection processes for that hasn't been as prevalent as they probably are getting now. So we probably will expect to see that happen as well. But like you said, like you've explained, the alcohol was the major issue, so that's why you focused on that. But we could just note that let's keep looking at it, because I don't know what the review sort of clause on this is, like how regularly we might re-look at the focus. Is that something that was considered? Like how regularly are we going to do? Is it annually or every 2 years or 3 years? Or
it's definitely not something that was discussed, but it is definitely something that is up for discussion depending on how the work program goes for the group. And yeah, just whether the CAS data does change, but yeah, noting that drugs are really hard to detect, and often it's just different. But obviously the drug driving bill has kind of come in and the police are slowly starting to gear up, but I think it will probably take some time to really see that in the data. And yeah, at the moment we just want to be data driven to kind of make it even.
I wonder, Murray, you might have an answer on that.
No, I don't know whether I've got an answer, but I just wanted to share that we actually had this same discussion at the Road Safety Committee meeting as well, as to consider where the drug or the influence of drugs actually should be triggered by the stats as they come through. So I think from a Road Safety Committee perspective, we certainly did have an in-depth, I guess, discussion as to why we would stick with alcohol at the moment, or focus on alcohol, I should say, at the moment, and consider the statistics as they become more available to us.
Thanks, Murray. And I'm thinking one idea might be, because I know Resolution 2 is about developing a document that relates to the 4 focus areas. It could just be that document includes a bit of a review sentence about how regularly that document might be updated and how regularly the data might be re-looked at. I don't really mind when it is, but I just think it's good to have it in there so we know when we're going to re-look at the thing, and noting that the drug issue.
Just thinking maybe an annual review of the focus areas might be the right approach, and gives some direction to the road safety working group to, we have a document, we have focus areas, we review it annually to see where the data's going, and then continue to bring back reporting and
sounds good
updates to the committee.
People happy with that? Cool.
I'm happy for the motion to be inclusive of that review.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we just note that as a secretarial note rather than change the resolution, because we get a bit wordsmithy. But if we just, note that, we'll add a review reporting sort of clause in that document, would be good.
Yep.
Cowboy. So any other questions for Erica? No, that's good. And so Murray was happy to move the 2 resolutions. Do I have a seconder for that? Yeah, Brown, thank you. Any more discussion required? Don't think so. All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? That's carried. Thank you. Let's go to 9.3, and this is our South Island Regional Transport Committee Chairs group minutes. And I know Councillor Edge did go to this, so he might want to speak. And I don't know if Tiara, you wanted to introduce anything of note about this paper?
I was in Bali.
You were in Bali too? Okay. Yes, you were there. So.
I'm happy to introduce the Chair. So just bringing through as we do. Tiara was unfortunately away at the time for the meeting, but and Chair, you're away as well. But Councillor Edge,
I wasn't in Bali though.
No, you weren't. No. But we bring through the South Island Regional Transport Committee Chairs minutes to the RTC. Some of the key items on the agenda where we presented the South Island Transport story for feedback. We had some great feedback from the Chairs group, and that feedback's being incorporated into the final draft, final version of that document, and that'll be presented back. We also presented through the South Island Transport Network Vulnerabilities Report, and that's included in your agenda pack. Sam is also online, just if there's any specific questions around that. We also presented the phase 2 scope for a South Island freight study. So that work is underway with Stantec as well at the moment. We had some updates from NZTA, Whakakapi, and also from Kiwi Rail about their where their work's headed and where their strategic direction for both organisations. So yeah, that was it was a really successful meeting. We've got another meeting coming up in July, so that's the next South Island RTC chairs meeting. So happy to take any questions, but all the information is contained.
Grant, you happy to add anything in?
Yeah, just a couple of things. We had the pleasure of having Simon Bridges attend the meeting, the whole of the meeting, so that was really good. At least he heard what some of the issues were in Canterbury, and he was interested in what he was up to his regions. The South Island transport story, it's going to be a very good advocacy document that you can just going to have a look at the graphics and the messaging and stuff like that, so that have it land on a minister's table and he can pick it up in an email, so they're not going to just click the next button and move on. Physical thing, hopefully, and the three key things that are in it: boosting the economy with efficient freight networks, driving that home, building network resilience. That's all about the stuff, the problems with our connections. And then the other thing, enabling people. So, yeah, that's going to be good when that's set out. It'll be circulating. Get that in there, but especially for the decision making. And then the other thing was
the vulnerabilities thing.
Yeah, the vulnerability. That's pretty. A lot of this is sort of about efficacy and providing the data that will enable us to move things forward. So it's kind of gathering issues across the South Island. That's going to provide some costs to it. A little bit anyway, but it's just a collation of information from different sources, because at the moment it's over the place. Great study. Great study. Yes, sort of. It's a title.
I omitted to say as well, we did have Minister Bishop scheduled to speak as well at the meeting. Unfortunately, he was delayed in cabinet, so we didn't get a chance to speak to him. But through the chair, Kate Wilson, of the chair of the South Island RTC group, they are looking to potentially go up to Wellington once the transport story's landed, as Councillor Edge has just pointed out. And have a discussion with the Minister about the South Island and the opportunities and challenges that we have here in the South. So we are also looking to be potentially in touch with Minister Mega, the South Island, for the next meeting in July as well. So to put the advocacy case to the Minister as well. And I know he's been certainly active in the South Island and would be no doubt interested in what's happening in the transport space. So particularly thinking about the vulnerabilities of the network and freight movement across the South Island. So.
Is it not those documents and the story? Is there still time for this group to, they wanted to?
Oh, look, if there's any final feedback, happy to take anything. We are trying to navigate, trying to finalise the documents at the minute. But certainly for the South Island transport story, if there's any glaring omissions that you feel that there was something that we could look at. In terms of vulnerabilities report, that's quite a technical report, but again, welcome any final feedback. And the freight study phase 2 work is ongoing, so we'll be bringing that back through the Chairs group as well. So, but as always, happy to take any feedback on board and present that through as well.
Thank you. Any other questions? No. Let's put our resolution up. That's just to note those unconfirmed minutes from that meeting. Thanks, Clarence. And to note the next meeting in July. Thanks, Mayor Portman. Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? That's carried. 9.4. That's our Waka Kotahi update. So Ian, you're up. I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, would you like us to share screen as we go through this, or?
Oh, yep, that'd be helpful if we can do that.
I can do that.
We can see that. That's great.
With the Transport Committee's permission, we're just gonna, whoops, what's happened? Hang on. Bear with us for a second.
All good. Take your time, Ian. It's all good. Don't stress if you can't get it to work, Ian, because we do have it in our papers with us. So all good.
For the one I'm going to do, it's probably not as important as the one that Megan's going to do after that. So we're going to split our update this time in 2 parts. We'll do the general update from the NZTA in the first half, and then Megan's going to do a bit of a deeper dive on some new tools that are available in Arataki. And we thought that'd be quite useful for the committee coming into the next RLTP cycle.
Thank you.
I'm quite happy just to take questions as we go through. So we'll start with the safety camera update. So you'll be aware that we're taking over mobile safety cameras from NZ Police. So from 1 July 2025, we'll be responsible for those. Our cameras that we're going to use this time are a bit different from the ones that you've seen before, in that the police have typically used minivans or vans to run their cameras. We're going to use SUVs in a variety of colours, but this is just a bit of an indication in the 2 pictures here that you see of the SUV and the new trailers. So from mid-May, you can expect to see the SUVs out in the network, and then later in the year, we'll be starting to use the trailers. Neither the SUVs or the trailers will be marked, but equally they won't be hidden. So we find that by not advertising that we've got cameras coming, we get a bigger effectiveness of them. And the idea behind them really is that we will still be running on any time, anywhere, so that you can expect to see these where we need to put them, and we will be targeting the areas of greatest need with them. The mobile camera provider organisation that we're using is a company called Ascensus New Zealand Limited, and our contract with them is purely hour based. So there's no ticketing incentive for them. They're just given a number of hours to deploy the cameras. Neither them nor us will receive any incentives or funding from the tickets issued, and all the money from the camera fines will go back into the government's consolidated fund. a census are only responsible for providing the data, the images from the cameras. So the actual, they've got no involvement at all in whether or not an offence has been committed from the evidence of the image. That is the NZTA's responsibility. So we'll be the enforcement agency responsible for processing the camera images and confirming whether a vehicle has been speeding and where it was and who owns it. And the NZTA will also decide where the cameras are going to be deployed. Okay, the next bit we'll just talk really about our winter maintenance. So the slides got some stuff we've already shared in some ways, and that we had a big summer programme and that was all good. We did a lot of kilometres. We are now obviously heading into winter, so we're still able to do some activities in terms of, you'll still see us do some asphalt activities because they can cope with the temperatures a little bit better. The rebuilding that we've managed to do this summer has put us into a better position going into winter. So we're comfortable that we've got more resilience into the network going this winter. But that doesn't mean that we're going to stop doing the 24-hour pothole approach. So once a pothole is big enough and deep enough, within 24 hours, you can expect to see it fixed on the network. What winter will see us moving towards is obviously more of a space where we've got to look after that whole snow, ice and more rain events, and still ensure that we're able to react to events. So like the rain that we had 3 or 4 weeks ago, which affected the Banks Peninsula and a large part of Canterbury. And we're still working with our contractors to ensure that we can respond to those events. We're also using the winter period to start to roll out the risk-targeted temporary traffic management approach across our contracts. And we're now in the process of procuring those new integrated delivery contracts that we talked about. So we hope to have those awarded by Christmas and then in place by April next year. So it's a bit of a watch this space with this. At the last RTC, we'd offered you whether you wanted to have a deeper dive on the NZG TTM model. So what we'll work on for the next RTC, if you're comfortable, is we will bring a bit more of a deep dive onto that with some case studies and some things to think about that might be suitable for the RCAs as to what the NZTTM and adopting it earlier might offer them. So we'll then talk about the emergency works. So it's just a bit of an update. You might be aware that our board's been considering whether they made changes to the enhanced FAR that comes with the emergency works provisions. And at this time, they've decided not within this NLTP period to make any changes. We will still be considering how we work alongside both us as an RCA and yourselves to ensure that we're looking to get the right level of maintenance and resilience into the next NLTP. So that's going to be a big focus with that. And so at the same time, we'll be working with the MOT around the development of the government policy statement and what that means to ensure that it's still got a focus on resilience and the right levels of service around the maintenance. The emergency works policy, though, won't stay static, so you can expect to see some changes in that in the 27 to 30 NLTP period. The one thing I would note, and you might want to just check that your teams are aware of, is there have been some minor changes around the emergency works policies, and the link to that's in the slide. So the previous slide mentioned the next RLTP, NLTP process, and we're about to start getting ready for GPS 2027 and working with the ministry on that. So this is just a flag to you really that that process is about to kick off. There will be some information that's requested, in particular what the level of funding is to the baseline level of funding is to maintain and improve the transport system for certain levels of service. To that end, we've been engaging with the REG leadership group and the Transport Special Interest group to ensure that we've got sector involvement in that. The first stab, I think, of getting that information and ensuring it gets into that process will be through the RLTPs, the RPTPs, and your AMPs. The information that for that will be the starting point to GPS 2027, but it's inevitable that I think that we'll probably need some more information. And so we will be endeavouring to come and get information from you and try and give you as much headway in that as we can. So we're going to try and make sure we don't come with super tight timeframes on that. But it's just to give you a bit of a heads up that that process is about to start. There is a probably initial response in terms of information that will be required by September this year, with a further update on that information by February 2026. So it's a bit of a watch this space, but it's going to kick off fairly soon. The next slide we just want to talk about is the setting of speed limits. We've talked about this quite a lot already. We just want to remind you that there's a deadline of 1 July 2025 for reversals to be implemented, and then 1 July 2026 for variable speed limits to be in place outside school gates. We are dealing with quite a lot of requests for information, as is the Minister's office, around the speed limits. So we just thank you and your officers for their patience at this point in time. The Minister, we understand, has advised some RCAs that he's not considering further changes to the rule at this point in time, or to waive the requirements that are within the rule. We just want to remind you that there are some things in the rule that allow you to retain some things and some things that need reviews within the rule. So speed limits that are registered and enforced by the 30th of October 2024 can remain unless they're subject to a reversal. And variable speed limits that were already implemented around school gates, even if they don't meet the new definition within the rule, can still remain. However, speed limit plans and alternative methods proposed, developed and consulted on and or certified, but not implemented under the old rule, the 2022 rule, have no legal effect. So if you've got something that's ready to go or in the drawer, we can't now use it. Essentially, you've got to go through the process again under the new rule and meet all the criteria within there. So we just draw that to your attention. Under the new rule, the councils can review a section that's due for auto reversal, but we just want to point out that the auto reversal still has to recur on 1 July, and so the time frame for consultation, if you already haven't started it, is I think you're going to struggle to be able to squeeze it in and just have that quick change on 1 July where it auto reverses for a moment and then goes back to where you end up with if you've gone through the consultation process and got it driven effectively. So you can still do a review on that, but I think what you're going to face is an auto reversal for a period before you have the other rule up in place. Just remind councils that there is funding available to help with the reversals. One of the discussions that's come up with councils, and it's probably just worth just a bit of a commentary on, is around non-compliance. So if there's some non-compliance with the rule, because we've got a role as the regulator to ensure compliance on that as well. So if the regulator or the NZTA has any reason to believe that an RCA is not complying with the requirements of the rule, we've got a requirement to notify you of that and then provide you with a reasonable opportunity to respond to that. If we're not satisfied with your response, we can direct the RCA to comply, and if the RCA chooses not to comply, the NZTA may exercise the power of the RCA to set speed limits under the rule. So there's probably quite a lot of information in that, but any questions, by all means get in touch with us. We're working through the process as much as you are. So just give you a bit of an insight into what we are doing now around, which is the next slide, around speed limits. So from mid-2025, the reversals programme will be well underway, including the variable speed limits outside schools, which will track through till July 2026. We will also be working as NZTA on areas where we've got highway projects that have got a speed management proposal within them, and that will include some of the intersection speed zones. Current and future and community speed limit review requests that are within our register, we will work through those from now through to 2027. Those will be subject to some prioritisation and obviously us having capacity internally and funding to look at them. And obviously there's a longer term management process to be considered as part of the safety programme to look at the bids for the next NLTP 2027 to 30 period. So we just draw that to your attention and make sure that both the state highways and local government are working towards that. Okay, we'll just keep going. So the Q3 reporting on ministerial expectations, just a real quick summary of what's happened to date with that. So we had 50 councils respond within the deadline, 8 further responded but were late. So only 4 out of 13 regions had 100% response. We are aware that the deadlines sometimes fall awkwardly around school holidays and public holidays, which may have affected the response rate on this occasion. And at the same time, we're also doing some work now to look at how we can simplify the process for this. And we've had a couple of webinars to answer some of the questions on that. We hope to have the Q4 reporting take place in July, but at this time the date's yet to be set. So if we get the date between now and when the minutes for this are issued, we will advise an update of the date within the minutes. We are interested to know from any councils who didn't engage in the reporting or the process, what we could do to assist helping you to report in Q4. So if you've got any thoughts or queries or comments or to provide feedback to us on that, we'd be quite helpful to receive them. You can provide those to me if that's easy. The last 2 slides I've got are just around a quick update on the Canterbury project. So we'll just whiz through those. So Brom Street, obviously we've got package 1, Simeon Collins Street Bridge. We've currently got that out for tender, and we hope to have construction underway for that mid-year, commencing sort of July 2025. Package 2, the corridor improvements. We've got property acquisition underway, a notice of requirement in progression, and we expect procurement for that to occur or commence around mid-2026 at the moment. Rolleston, it's got a few packages of work, so the roundabout design is now complete. The flyover design substantially complete at 90%. Property acquisition process is going well, with the public work acquisition well advanced. The consenting is progressing, and we think that's currently reasonably low risk. And the Kiwi Rail terms, we're yet to agree, but it's progressing, and we're hopeful that we'll be able to reach a resolution of that and be able to advise on that soon. Hallswell, obviously we had a recent storm event and a live construction site with that, and part of that, a big part of the construction for that was drainage. So it's actually given us quite good confidence in design through that storm event. The storage capacity and that we've got sufficient storage capacity and resilience for future events. What we did see with that was, well, we had some localised flooding and the council's retention basins were at capacity. The new drainage system performed quite well with that. So we're now in the process with that project of swapping our work programme over to the northbound lanes for the urbanised section, and that encompasses about 50% of the overall works. The southbound work that we've been doing is about 80% complete now, and the balance of that will be completed in the next construction season when we come to do our sealing. Aidenfield intersection has been signalised and commissioned, and so this has now enabled the developers to get on and do the 4th leg of their intersection. And then the last page, which is around the Ashburton Second Bridge and Belfast to Pegasus. The geotech for the Ashburton is underway, so we've got test pits that we hope to have completed by the end of May, and boreholes expected to be completed in early July. Principal technical procurement is now expected to be appointed in early June. We've got an ECI, an early contractor process out for procurement at the moment, and we hope, we've got that underway, and we hope to be able to commence in June and expect to have a preferred tenderer by late August in that. Consenting, the ecological investigations are mainly complete. The regional consent application is expected to be lodged in August, and we're working closely with ECAN and DOC on that regarding the river management and the bridge design. Property is almost fully acquired, and the construction is still expected to commence in mid-2026. In Belfast to Pegasus, we're progressing with the geotech investigations on site, and in particular around the Ruddy Mix Lake is pictured. A press release through the Minister went out in early May, which has sparked a few local news stories, and the detailed design is nearing 30% completion, with a design philosophy statement that has been released for review. Our relationship with Whitiora on this has taken a big turn for the better, and we've integrated 3 of their key members into our design team reviewer roles, and they've provided on-site monitoring and support during the geocheck investigations, which was much needed. And then later again, they will be involved once the physical works commences. And the consenting strategies for this project are also well underway, and we're having discussions with the EPA around the fast tracking process, and the property purchasing is progressing on all sections of this. Quite happy to take any questions you might have on this.
Thanks, Ian. Sorry, I was just chatting to me, Gordon. Grant, you got a question?
Just a couple of questions, Ian. One of them about the safety cameras. I didn't realise they were being operational until mid-May, and driving up here today, of course, seeing unmarked cars at the side of the road. Not that I exceed the speed limit, but are you undertaking?
I was with him. He was really good.
Previous fellow.
I'm pleased to hear that. That's good news.
I just don't drive, you see. I just go with someone else.
What I'm wondering, I mean, there doesn't seem to have been an extensive public engagement about what's happening with this, and it's supposed to be a sort of a safety issue, but people aren't going to realise that they've been speeding potentially until they get a ticket, and by then it's too late for them to sort of slow down, take reaction. So, are you undertaking a sort of like a full advisory notice to every motorist in New Zealand, so that they've got that, they understand it, they can actually friends and actually respond before everything?
We got there today.
I suppose the short answer to that is we've been promoting an anytime, anywhere approach to speed. Yeah. So the message that we've given nationally is that you can expect a speed camera anytime, anywhere, and we will target areas of risk. So I don't, while we are identifying the locations that we want the speed cameras to be in, what we want the public to be aware of is that actually they can occur anytime and anywhere. So I don't think we're going to do specific consultation on that, but look, I will check with our engagement and comms team on that.
I wasn't thinking of consultation, it's more just engagement, so that the communication to the public that this is happening, so you don't get a whole lot of people knocking on your door. My second question is about Brown Street and package 2 corridor improvements. And you're talking about procurement, property acquisition. Is that through the Public Works Act as well?
Policeman out of the car. Very good.
Is it?
I'm not sure whether what we're doing in terms of the Public Works Act through Brom Street, whether we've got. All I know at the moment is that the property acquisition is being progressed. Typically, what we do is we see whether we can acquire stuff without needing to use the Public Works Act. So we've got willing sellers, willing buyer type approach. But look, I'll bring an update to the next RTC on that if you like.
Thanks, Ian.
Thank
you. Neil.
Yeah, thanks. Ian, I've got a couple of questions. One's the rollout of risk-based traffic management. Is that meaning less road cones? Is that what that's meaning?
Yeah, it's about getting them proportionally right, because if you remember, if we went back previously, one of the complaints had been there were too many road cones and they were out for too long, and were they required in every situation? And so Coptum was very much driven on under this situation, this is the layout you need to apply to it, whereas the risk-based traffic management is to take a more localized look at what you're facing and go, what's the the appropriate traffic management that we need for the activity we're doing now, which does put a bit more flexibility into the system. So yes, the short answer is you should see less cones for certain activities and more cones or as many cones for some.
The other question I've got is, you may be aware or may not, in your role, just south of Wollaston, there's been a lot of roadworks being going on State Highway 1, and everyone from Ashburton's been travelling further, and they're now coming to completion. And we see now what has been, what the outcome is, what the achievement is. It looks like the centre line is being put in for 1 metre to separate the two lanes by white lines. They've been there for about 4 or 5 months doing it. Just thinking value for money, what is now we can see has been achieved. Was it good value for money is the question. That's what the people of Ashburton I talk to are asking. You know.
Well, is this the bit that's just coming into Ashburton where we've done the widening, or is this the bit further north? So I suppose
what's relevant now is you've done some widening on a passing lane, and it's been there 3 or 4 months, probably 4 to 5 months doing that work. And what achievement we see, was it good value for money for what's been achieved?
Yeah, I think my sense on that at the moment is we've got a holding seal on one of the lanes. So there's a wee bit more work to do come the spring when we'll have to come back and put the final surfacing on that lane. So that's the near side lane rather than the fast lane. The 1 metre centre lines, we know that where we've widened centre lines or employed no hit posts in centre lines, that actually we've had a significant reduction in those head-on crashes. So that's what we'd expect to see from that. But look again, yeah. But I can come back with an answer to that at the next RTC. We can explain how we looked at the benefit cost ratio around it and what we think the value for money is with it.
Thanks, Ian. Any other questions? I think, are we going to you now, Megan? Okay, let's hand over to you. Thanks, Ian.
Alrighty. Just present and change. Yeah. Well, firstly, thank you for having me. It's a delight to be here. I would have loved to have been here in Kaikoura in person. I haven't been there for a very long time, and it's also nice to see some people from TOG here as well. Oh no, it's that lady talking again. All right, so I won't keep you long because I know 5 o'clock is creeping up on us. But today the purpose is to give you an overview of our updated regional chapter and to seek your feedback. Let's go. Okay, so Arataki is a strategic tool, right? And for those of you who are not familiar with it, we do look at the national context and the regional context, and we're trying harder and more, I guess, more obviously to make the interrelation so they speak to each other. So what we find in the regional chapters as we form them gets brought up into the national and vice versa. And yeah, so there's some unique regional slants to some of those big meaty national issues, and we apply. So it's a 30-year time horizon. We use system thinking and foresight techniques guided by what we have, which is the Transport Outcomes Framework and our key drivers for future change to develop the content. And then we go here, there and everywhere for evidence and data and subject matter expertise, and to build those stories of challenges. What are the challenges that the region or the nation faces? And then we go through a process of theming insights, and then looking at what are the key shifts that are needed to move those seemingly insurmountable challenges. So we have gone since early last year, we've started to update the regional chapters based on a lot of feedback. We love getting feedback. And from the original 2023 published versions, and Northland and Canterbury were our first cabs off the rank. So we've spent a whole year refining, like looking at both the structure of the regional chapter and the content, which brings us here today. And so we first started with our regional staff, and then we started a series of coming and annoying the transport officers group and asking for their opinion, and it's been really invaluable. And I can't state enough the absolute value of the transport officers groups and that sort of forum to help us shape this into a better document that has more use. So a lot of the things that were feedback was there was a lot of duplication, it was too generic, and there was a scale of change graphic that people got really distracted by, and it wasn't useful. It just distracted from the real meat of the content. And so I think now we have a stronger regional flavour, much more spatial view, deeper insight and clearer direction. And it was really key. It was, you know, we kind of build the plane as we go. And so because we want this to be a co-created document, and, you know, I am the first one to say this is not 100% pure co-creation, but we will work towards that in further iterations. But we're learning as we go, and we change and we're quite willing to change as we go as well. So sequencing of presenting information, not polishing it too much before you present it, because really you're just going to get it all torn to pieces, and that's what we want. We really want that. As long as people that tear things to pieces are also willing to help us build it back up within reason. Yeah, and what we've come out with is a document that is much more condensed into insights at the top, and then a very fulsome appendix full of all the supporting information, so that people that want to nerd out and get really into the detail can, but those who want to just get the top, you know, sort of pithy statements and visuals can go to the top and just, you know, not spend a lot of time. Although I recommend, you know, bedtime reading. I wanted to say about Canterbury, there's so much great stuff going on. The community transport model is one that can be, I think, shown to the rest of the regions, and perhaps, you know, evaluated and lessons learned and shared with other regions who I know are really keen to develop and adopt a community transport model. Your partnership with iWis is obviously super mature, deep and developed, and you've got amazing strategic documents that makes, you know, our job really easy, because you've already done the cracking work, like the spatial plan and the PT Futures, and you have an obscene amount of really scenic roads. So let's get into the challenges. This was like the big part where people went back and forth. We had 6, we had 5, we had 4. So we've landed on 4, and we had a lot of feedback from our critical friends, and so these are the 4 that we've landed on. And it's critical to get these right, because if we don't, then it throws the rest of the document off. In the end, we won't provide the right direction. So yeah, I would like to pause here now and check with you. Are these landing okay? Are these all right? Do they sound good? Are we missing anything?
Yeah, Brown, you got some feedback?
I can keep adding to my list actually, but it's good. Thanks for this. Some issues that have been raised at this meeting from time to time include things like equestrian safety on our roads, things like drivers licensing, speeding that process up, in their transport choices, you know, thinking of issues related to mode shift, cycling and walking.
Yeah.
MOE education buses for children, and just what you mentioned before, scenic route upgrades. Where would those sort of things fit with structure?
So in the actual report, which is a whole bunch of words and some maps, most of those things that you just mentioned are mentioned, particularly in the supporting information. But I'm not sure that we talk about equestrian safety as an issue. It didn't rise up to us, so that's an interesting point to look at. But yeah, so that's where you'll find that kind of analysis, and we look. So, for example, we look at healthy and safe people, one of the transport outcome framework outcomes. And so we look at that, and then any themes that we find across the outcomes in particular are the things that come up to the top as those key challenges. Something that repeats across multiple outcomes is something that is probably is something that will rise to the top, rather than something that's maybe a bit smaller and spatially unique, or a small section of a network, or does that answer your question? You might want to do some bedtime reading.
Thanks.
I'll
have to look further.
Yeah, I think these are really high level. Those things are probably next level down sort of stuff. I don't know how we reflect that, but
we do
Sam,
operate we do operate at quite a high level, and you'll see in the next slides that we go down a little bit, but not enough to, I guess, to some of that real specific detail. That's for strategic transport planning to kick in.
Sam, you go.
Yeah, thank you for this. I mean, that does cover most the high level stuff. Bridges is always comes up for us, and I guess that's captured under the resiliency piece. The movement of freight is again always front of mind and part of our discussions here. I just wondered the top one, growth patterns in Greater Christchurch, put significant pressure on the transport system. And I note further in the document, there's kind of no mention of MRT as a particular solution to the problem that we've got, which is also about the growth patterns and the city shaping nature of what MRT would deliver for Greater Christchurch. So I'm not sure how that fits in as a specific, but it's part of our growth patterns are a problem, and MRT would actually help concentrate where and how we grow.
Alrighty, I am going to. That's an action for me to see whether MRT is brought up enough under that key challenge, because I know we've definitely mentioned it.
It is there on page 462 of our agenda on the focusing effort, and that's the first bullet point, developing rapid transit network. It's pretty, again, high level statement, but you have offered a bit more to that sentence might be useful about how it responds to that challenge. Good.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. What you don't have in front of you, unfortunately, is all of that. Is all of the narrative. We don't want to bore you, but I think this is what we're saying. I think where this is heading to is that we distribute the actual draft to you so that you can have a look at it. Make sure we've got it right.
Neil, you got a question?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm at the highest level or not, but
doesn't matter.
Further out from Greater Christchurch into the regions, and it's around the road conditions. We're not getting the dollars to maintain those conditions, so we can't. To maintain those roads where they need to be maintained, if the dollars are simply not coming through. So the resilience of the region's freight system is compromised by high dependence of road transport and possibly lack of funding for repairing those rural roads, which feed into the freight networks, rail.
That's right. That's right. And actually, we started this. One of the challenges was the funding one, but we realised that actually that's a national issue. So we've fed that up into the national direction, and we talk about it there. But we definitely do talk about the funding issues in the document. Yeah, it's just sort of a symptom, isn't it, of many of these
I think it would be good for it to be mentioned here and on those key challenges for Canterbury, as you would have heard earlier on. I think it is a particular thing for Canterbury, and I think Neil's put that pretty well to you there, that it could be added onto that 4th bullet point as an addition to that, or a separate bullet point around the funding for maintenance of our network. I think that's a fair enough point.
But I suppose the quality of funding.
Yeah.
So the national issues.
Quality of funding.
And for us, it's quality.
Okay. So what do you mean by quality?
So
like the amount?
Inequality, at the moment we're receiving less than half of our VDT
equality,
compared to
yes.
everyone else.
Okay, got you. I was like, quality of funding.
We can put our awesome table in there if you want to.
Oh yeah. No, fair point. Fair point.
I think it is a particular issue for Canterbury, so it should be mentioned. So I'll push for that.
Okay.
Any other questions from members or feedback? Sorry. Happy for you to keep going, Megan. I know there's a little bit more to go.
So these, I'm just going to whistle through these maps. Oh my God. So usually we'd have one insight map of the region, but your region's so big. So we had to split it into 4. And James Cagle was particularly exercised over these maps, and he suggested splitting it up so that you could actually see what you're looking at. Yeah, so at the moment, we've got this sort of northern area, and so this one is mainly the insight, and it's mainly the challenge insights. So this goes with the challenge statements and the narrative around that. So what you can see here is obviously your resilience risks here with, you know, seismic and some flooding, and the state highway and the railway line being very close together and very close to the coast. So you've got that yellow, you can barely see it, the yellow. Don't worry, we'll get our design people to make this a bit clearer. That this is a extreme resilience risk through this corridor from Kaikoura north. And Amberley to Ashburton, this is, we've got a separate one for Greater Christchurch because there's a cluster of challenges there. So this one is, yes, more resilience issues, but you also see north and south here, the kind of cumulative deficiencies on the network, especially that Ashburton to Greater Christchurch and up to the sort of growth area there around Amberley. You're getting a second bridge, so hopefully that'll ease some of that pain. You also see State Highway 73, it's extreme resilience risk, and we had a really interesting conversation about the strategic use of State Highway 73 and State Highway 7 in light of the resilience risk into the future, especially with AF8. Yeah, so this is one that speaks to the confluence of goods and people coming into Christchurch. And shout out to the Greater Christchurch spatial plan for this cool map that we use as a base. Why reinvent the wheel when you've done such a great job? So lots and lots of growth and congestion, and there's, you know, transport disadvantage in the eastern suburbs of Christchurch, and yeah, there's a lot going on, and it's really hard to make it really visible, all of the, you know, the MRT line and the you know, public transport corridors and things like that. It was really difficult. You guys have got so much going on in this area. Yeah. Okay. And lastly, but not least, the southern section, which again is future, you know, resilience issues, flooding risk, and the highway and main south line in close proximity to each other. And then there's Te Maru, a growing centre that, you know, smaller communities rely on for essential services, and a port that is busy and would like to expand. So we've, you know, so that's sort of the visual stuff. And then we go to, okay, so we've got these challenges. What do we need to do to really shift it? And this is still super high level in a response to those challenges. specifically, and then we go into quite a lot of, then we go down a step and talk a bit more specificity. Yeah, so for example, growth, there's been heaps of thinking and planning, done. There's some great plans out there. It's about really putting those into reality. And a big message from the Transport Officers Group was, public transport. And then resilience is something that is very similar across regions, but we try to bring out the unique essence of the resilience issue challenge in each region. So we talk about the bridges. There's a lot of end-of-life infrastructure, and your interregional connections are unique, and the West Coast in particular is particularly reliant on them. And the AF8 is something that is pretty unique to the South Island. Is not as much of a problem in Northland. They have other issues. And then we always aim to have a key shift that is about deepening or advancing partnership with Māori. We got told, and quite rightly, thanks Claire mainly, who's great with this. It's not just about partnership with Māori. Like you guys have been doing that for years. You have a really mature partnership. It's about deepening that Ngāi Tahu specific worldview of mātauranga into transport planning, and also and maybe in doing that with you've got a lot of opportunities to do that. That's been spelled out in planning documents and iwi management, iwi aspirations. And then your resilient freight system, and you're already starting to do good stuff with scoping the South Island Freight Study, which will be a great model for other parts of the country. And we zero in some key corridors like the Littleton to Rolleston to Timaru freight corridor. So do some more sort of clustering of more a sort of a holistic approach to these corridors in terms of what's happening for freight and coastal shipping. And we always put coastal shipping in response and recovery. Yeah, and so so basically, what apart from feedback now, I know it was a bit of a whistle-stop tour. We could send out the document for your bedtime reading, and if we have missed anything or we've said something wrong or we haven't crossed a T or dotted an I, we'd love to hear back from you. Just noting that we have passed it by the Transport Officers Group, but I don't think that you guys, Transport Officers Group, haven't seen the final. So it'd be great to get it out to you guys to get some thoughts. But please, right now, if you've got any, if you want to wrap things up, you can. Otherwise, I'm here for questions.
Thanks, Megan. I think, is there any specific stuff yet, Karen?
So the one insight I would have is that you talked about corridors and about freight, but actually there's a significant corridor that goes through Canterbury and into Central Otago for tourists. And somewhere along there they need to be accounted for. And then, to be fair, it comes along the way, Craig, you get it too. But yeah, we have this tourist network, the tourist corridor. And I think given the government's growth agenda around tourism, probably not going to go away. We might need to think about how we incorporate that.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it could fit under the maintain transport infrastructure in a way that addresses increasing risk. Not quite the one, but I think you're right. It needs to be in there somewhere.
Okay.
So,
okay.
I think in terms of a way to progress this, Megan, is that we probably need our own time. I know that the transport TOG, is it? Officers Group, that's it. Have had a look at it, but we probably need a bit more time, and I don't think 5 o'clock in Kaikoura's time to do it.
Oh, no.
So we'll definitely want to look at it. I know there's a few things that I've picked up. There's on some of the diagrams and things. So But let's get back to you. And if you can send stuff through to us, and we'll work with our staff to send some sort of collated responses, that'd be great.
Okay, I'll work with Ian to get that stuff through to you. And
Cool,
thank you for the opportunity to speak to you, and love to meet you all.
Thank you. So people happy to do our resolution for this part, and then we'll try and get to the last item. So that's receiving the update from Kotahi. Sam, you're happy to move it? Thank you. Neil, happy to second it. All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? That's carried. Thank you again, Ian and Megan, for that. And we'll move to the last item there, which is the report from the chair. I'll take that as read. Happy to answer any questions if I can on those things in there. Anyone got any questions? You're happy to move it? Okay, that's good. So Mayor Broughton has moved it, and Mayor Maxwell has seconded it. All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? That's carried. Thank you. And that brings us to our next meeting, which is 21st of August. I think that'll be the last one for this term. And happy to do our karakia to close, but also just to say thank you again for the efforts to bring our meeting to Kaikoura. Thanks again, Craig, for inviting us here. Thanks to all the staff for making the journey and setting the room up so that we could have the meeting. And those that joined online, ngā mihi kia koutou, mō koutou mahi. Ai, kia tau, ngā manakitanga o ngā me runga ki tēnā o tātou, ko mahia te hua mā kiki, kia toi te reo, kia toi te mana, kia toi te aroha, tūturu whakamā, kia tīna, haumia hui e, tā ki e. Kia ora koutou. Thank you.